So you're training hard, but you feel like you're not really making any progress, or worse, maybe certain exercises are actually giving you pain. Well, let me tell you, it might not actually be your form, it might literally be the exercise choice itself. Because after all, just because an exercise is popular doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna be the best choice if your goal is hypertrophy. So in this video, I'm gonna talk about these 7 exercises that you should be avoiding, as well as give the alternative of what you should be doing instead to maximize muscle growth. Let's get into it. Now, I'm not just gonna be pulling this from thin air. Instead, I'm gonna be using a combination of biomechanics, my own coaching insight, as well as science-based lifting to back this all up. Now, here's how this is gonna go. Number 1, I'm gonna give you the exercise that you should stop doing. Number 2, I'm gonna explain why it's worth reconsidering. And number 3, I'm gonna give you the alternative that I recommend instead. So with that said, let's jump in. Now, exercise number 1 I don't recommend you do is gonna be the upright row. Now, I take it that quite a few of you guys have probably tried this and probably have noticed some sort of like shoulder discomfort. And this is actually a very common thing. Research by Kubler-Tal found that when you're training in this very abducted position in your frontal plane, it's pretty common to find shoulder discomfort compared to if you're training closer to your scapular plane out here. Then, if you add internal rotation into the mix while also being your frontal plane, it's just not really the best position to be in my humble opinion. Not to say that you can't do this exercise without getting a shoulder pain, because there's definitely gonna be people out there in the comments saying, oh yeah, I don't find a problem with this at all. However, when I think about the alternatives available, there's really no reason to be doing this. And that is because if you have a pair of dumbbells, well, a really good alternative that I would recommend is a simple dumbbell lower raise. Here we're still getting a short and focused side delt exercise where it's hardest can be at the top, but because the movement's isolateral, we have a lot of freedom and mobility with our shoulder, meaning we can actually raise in the scapular plane, as well as reap all the benefits of isolateral training, one of which being reducing right to left muscular imbalances. Just be sure if you're trying to bias the side delts as best as you can, to lean forward so that your side delts in this more short position is facing directly up against the sky. Let's say you want to keep your arms bent when you're doing a side delt exercise. Well, in that case, you could opt to do a machine lateral raise, but keep in mind, the resistance profile in this exercise is going to be slightly more mid-range focused rather than all the way short and focused up here. So dumbbell lateral raise is technically going to be closer to an upright row in terms of resistance profile, but hey, you can always do both. Now, exercise number 2 is going to be the behind the neck pull down. Once again, for similar reasons why I don't recommend doing the upright row, this exercise is just not going to be the most comfortable for most people's shoulders. Or maybe I shouldn't say most people. However, I feel like a higher likelihood of people are probably going to face shoulder discomfort for honestly no real gain on this exercise compared to doing, as you can probably imagine what I'm going to say next, the conventional wide grip lat pull down in front of your body. Now, the reason why I say there's really no gain on this exercise is sure, you're able to preserve a more purely frontal plane type of pull down. However, the range of motion on this exercise isn't that great because, well, your back is going to hit the bar. And when you consider that the lats have the best leverage to do the act of adduction, which is what we're trying to train here, you really can't get that low, well, the advantage of being purely in our frontal plane kind of disappears. Which brings me back to my recommendation, which is going to be a wider grip conventional lat pull down done in front of your body. Now here we're going to be able to get our arms adducted lower, meaning we're actually going to be able to train the part of the range of motion that's probably going to be the best for the lats. Now admittedly, we're not going to be able to get as far into our frontal plane compared to doing a behind the neck pull down. However, for those that really care about this, let me show you guys a pretty gnarly alternative. That second option for a purely frontal plane lower lat focus exercise is going to be the Keenan flaps. Now I guarantee a lot of you guys, unless you guys are on science-based TikTok, probably have not seen this exercise. The thought process behind this exercise is essentially we're doing a normal lat pullover, but in our frontal plane. I highly recommend using a cuff if you're going to be doing this exercise. And what we're going to do here is poke our arm through this cuff as far as you can until it is nestled on your upper arm. And what we're going to do is take a step aside so we unrack the cables. And like I mentioned before, we're essentially going to do a lat pullover, but in our frontal plane. So we want to focus on getting our elbows down to the side of our body, like this. Ooh. Now the hardest point of this exercise is going to be roughly midway through the range of motion around here, which exactly matches the point where the lower lats is going to have the best leverage to do the act of arm adduction. Which is why, as crazy as this exercise looks, it's actually a pretty good option if you can find a way to make this actually comfortable on your arm. I'm not saying you have to do this exercise, I'm just giving you options here. Moving on to the next one. So real quick, if you're wondering where I got my core zip from, well, a quick shout out to Abel for supplying some gym gear for me. As always, you can use code PATH to get 10% off of your order. Support is much appreciated. If that's not possible, all good. I just ask that you like the video as a free way to support my page. Back to the content. Moving on to the turf, because exercise number 3 is going to be a body weight sit-up. Now, there's not technically anything inherently wrong with doing a body weight sit-up. However, I will say if you have access to a whole commercial gym, in my opinion, doing a body weight exercise and not taking advantage of the equipment at hand just doesn't really make sense for me. Also, loading on this exercise becomes increasingly difficult because, well, our arms kind of become a limiting factor if we're trying to do weighted sit-ups with this plate, which is ultimately why I'd recommend the cable weighted ab crunch, because not only can we actually load the movement, but we can also get a better range of motion on this exercise, because not only can we contract our abs by performing spinal flexion, arguably better than on a bodyweight setup, but we can also get a better stretch on the abs by allowing our spine to go into extension, hence this arch that I have going on right now. Struggling to make progress, or you're just looking for more personal guidance to take the guesswork out of your fitness goals, I highly recommend you apply to my exclusive one-on-one fitness coaching program, where my clients are pretty much getting all of that. Meaning you're getting custom workout programs, recipes, the ability to ask questions as they come up, as well as weekly check-ins. So if that sounds interesting to you, check the link in the description down below. Now, exercise number 4 is going to be a dumbbell fly. Now, you may have heard creators glaze this exercise because of the great stretch it gives you, and while it is true, this is a good length and focus chest exercise, it is, however, missing one key thing that I think is particularly important when you're doing a fly in relation to a chest press, which is probably the other chest exercise we're going to be doing. And that factor is being able to train both extremes of the range of motion. So not only being able to get fully lengthened, getting our arms all the way out so that our chest gets a deep stretch, but also being able to train the short position once our arm passes this 90-degree break point. Of course, with a dumbbell fly, because we're working with free weight, we're restricted by gravity. Meaning if you imagine me doing a fly right now, there's really gonna be no tension once our arms gets to pretty much parallel with gravity. Which is why I ultimately recommend you swap out the exercise for a pec deck fly, where not only are we able to get that same deep range of motion in the lengthened position, but we're getting resistance going across our chest as well in this more shortened part of the range of motion where we weren't able to get before. Now, the 5th exercise is going to be a dumbbell tricep kickback. Now, the main issue with this exercise is going to be the range of motion. Because we're using dumbbells, once again, we are restricted by gravity. And there's virtually going to be no tension once you hit around 90 degrees. In fact, a vast majority of the tension is going to be near lockout, making this a very short and focused exercise. Now compare that to a cable tricep extension, where we're going to be able to get a better range of motion with actual tension. However, what if we want to get our arm behind our body? Well, that is when the leaning cable tricep extension, or you can call this the cable tricep kickback, comes in. By leaning our body, we're able to get our shoulder back behind our body and further shorten the long head if that is important for you for whatever reason. Now, the setup on this cable tricep kickback is pretty simple. I recommend taking a hook grip on the cable. What you're gonna do is grab either this pole or some support beam of the cable, lean back, and simply focus on extending the tricep. Now, in this more shortened position, ideally, your hand should end up behind your body if you're doing this properly, but if you're not leaning far back enough, grab the cable tower itself and you're gonna get even more into shoulder extension. Now, real quick, if you're spending all this time optimizing each exercise to try to maximize hypertrophy, you better have your nutrition dialed in too. And a big part of optimizing on the nutrition side of things is making sure you're hitting at least 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight. Now, if you need some help to hit that protein intake on a daily basis, that is where a high quality protein powder such as the ones from My Protein can come in. Now, I highly recommend Clear Whey Protein, as they have the best macros in a protein powder available, but if you're budget conscious, I recommend the Impact Whey. They're third-party tested, they taste great, and there's pretty much a flavor out there for everyone's taste. So if you're gonna get something, I would appreciate you using code TYLRPath to get anywhere from 40 to 51% off net total in your order. Link is down below. Let's get back to the content. Now, exercise number 6 is gonna be a barbell row. Another controversial takeaway, hear me out. On a set to failure, I've yet to meet another person whose lower back does not give out before their lats, rhomboids, traps, the back muscles you're actually trying to train on this exercise. Meaning, out of pretty much every exercise out there, I'm most confident that your erectors will always be a limiting factor on this movement. No matter how often you train your erectors, they're likely gonna give out before the muscles you're actually trying to train here. Which is ultimately why I'd recommend a chest supported row, because it's simply more stable on this exercise. Your erectors are definitely not gonna be a limiting factor on this movement like it is on a barbell row. Now, exercise number 7 is going to be the deadlift. Now, whether you're doing conventional or sumo deadlift, if you are doing a deadlift on back day, thinking that you're training your back, well, whoop, you're not. In fact, you're probably hurting your back gains in the long term by doing this. Allow me to explain. I'm gonna clear all of this up. The deadlift is gonna be a lower posterior chain exercise, meaning you're gonna be training predominantly the glutes, hamstrings, and if you're doing conventional, a little bit of the erectors as well. However, when it comes to the muscles like lats, traps, you know, the ones you think of when you think of back training, well, they're not really gonna be playing a role in this exercise, and let me prove this to you. Now, I want you to do a little bit of a thought experiment here. I want you to think of all the quote-unquote bodybuilding exercises you do in a gym. What do they all have in common? Well, they usually involve training one or a few muscle groups by moving a joint. These are known as isotonic exercises. But when you're doing the deadlift, we're doing a combination of knee and hip extension, right? We're straightening our knees and extending our hips. Now let me ask you, what does the back have anything to do with hip or knee extension? And the answer is, well, nothing. Because the lats and the traps play an isometric role on the deadlift, meaning they prevent your shoulders from caving forward at the bottom of a deadlift, and that resistance actually quickly drops off as you stand up. This is similar to training your chest by holding a bench press with your arms spread out and not actually going down, literally just holding it there. Instead, in order to maximize lats and traps growth, you need to take it through a range of motion by moving a joint that it crosses. And those were these 7 exercises. Now, admittedly, there are probably more that I can think of that I did not cover in this video. However, let me give you this lesson and takeaway so you can decide which exercise you should be doing if your goal is to maximize hypertrophy. Now, number 1, choose exercises that are pain-free. Number 2, prioritize exercises that don't have a limiting factor. That is, they allow you to adequately train the target muscle to failure and progressive overload over time. And number 3, make sure that the target muscle in question has leverage to perform that joint action, which is admittedly harder to do, but hey, that's why you watch my videos. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Leave a like, support my page, hit subscribe to level up your physique, and don't forget to hit the bell notification, get these videos right to you as they come hot. I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.